Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hey, beautiful. If you love this podcast, you have got to do Ayurveda school. We love it. It's every single Wednesday for a year where you get to learn all of the mystic teachings of Ayurveda, Tantra, yoga, and what makes it so wonderful is we combine all of that with modern science and fun stuff that makes it real and authentic for a modern woman's life. We would love to have you in 2023. And right now, the early bird price is at an all-time low, and it ends September 30th. And P.S., if you're a podcast listener and you mention the secret code Hot Girl Summer, my staff will give you $100 off. I would love to meet you there and spend 2023 seeing you every Ayurveda Wednesday. Links are in the show notes. All right, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. It's Katie here. We have a very fun, I know, experience ahead of us today. I am here with my new friend, Lisa Holden. She is a dating expert, a journalist, and public speaker. And this woman has written things that have titles that are like the most catchy dating titles I've ever heard of. 12 dating trends to watch, how to cast a love spell in lockdown. I went on 30 dates in 30 days. This is what happened. And my favorite, I went on a blind date in front of a live audience. And so Lisa and I had the pleasure of meeting a few weeks ago, and she was actually kind of interviewing me to see if she was going to write an article, and that may still happen. But as we started talking, I was like, Lisa, you have to come on the podcast. You and I need to sit down, girlfriend vibes, and have a public conversation about what we are talking about. So we're going to get into that today with Lisa. But Lisa, welcome to Spirit Sessions.
Thank you so much. What an honor it is with that intro and to be here having a session with a fellow spirit, Katie. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I mean, I really see this podcast as a place where regular Jennies from the block can get together and talk about deep spiritual stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really where my heart is. And I feel like you and I had that bond from the get. And so I think to kick us off, I want to know, because our audience doesn't know you and I don't know you super well, but I get the feeling that you're a deeply soulful, spirit motivated woman. And you are also like super pop culture, and you're also like super into dating. And so tell us a little bit about your background, spiritually speaking, and how that kind of guided you into the realm of writing about dating.
Sure. I started my life here on planet Earth with two parents who were deeply involved in the Self-Realization Fellowship Church, which is a religious institution founded by someone named Paramahansa Yogananda. And it is this very East meets West kind of philosophy that centers around meditation and really champions meditation as the road to enlightenment. So back when I was born in the 80s, that was a pretty hippy-dippy idea and didn't make me all that popular, but it set this foundation for an appreciation of spirituality and meditation in a way that you really are kind of forced to make your own in this effort of self-realization in the arena of fellowship. And so that was my kind of upbringing, very meditation focused, very yoga focused. I grew up in a total yoga household, vegetarian, very gentle household. And what I think is funny about that upbringing is that as a youth, you can rebel against anything. And that's exactly what I did. That was my strict upbringing that I wanted to rebel against. I was like, meditation isn't for me. I don't like all the rules. I don't like any of this. I want to be normal. My whole thing was, this is so weird. None of my friends get it. Kids called it a cult, you know? And so I had to push up against that. And I think that's sort of something that is the coming of age story, no matter where you start, has something to do with you breaking out of whatever shell you started in. And that was mine. So I sort of rejected all of that spirituality and I pursued the effort with a laser focus on being as normal and as likable as possible. And it sounds a little sad and a little funky to say it that way, but I was this only child in this like funky household. And I wanted to be accepted. And I made it my mission to do that. I went to the most normal, boring college I could. I, studied all my girlfriends around me who drove white Jettas and just were like, basic gals. I wanted to be that so badly. And in that effort, I think I found myself in some really important ways. I figured out like how social dynamics worked, how to be funny, how to be likable, how to talk to anyone and find out what's interesting about them and also hide and damper down what was unique about me. Didn't like that. And that bred this adult who just wanted to be loved so much that I got into kind of the first relationship I possibly could and held on for dear life. And that didn't exactly breed someone who was bringing their whole self to a situation. It didn't bring someone who really liked themselves all that much. And when I ended, I was in back-to-back serious relationships. And when I ended my last serious relationship at 30, I realized I had cultivated a persona of someone who could talk to anyone and be very likable. But I had all this background in self-reflection and meditation. And I had to find a way to access that in order to figure out who I actually was. And that started me down a road of really being expressive about who I was, dating for the first time with my interests at the forefront and asking myself whether or not I liked another person versus the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And
do they like me?
Do they like me was always what I was asking myself, because that was more important to me. And shifting that took a lot. And it took re-embracing meditation, re-embracing self-reflection in order to do that. And so now I am someone who writes about my romantic endeavors, and it is all in an effort to celebrate my own journey and my own work and celebrating exactly who I am with that spirituality component that has always been so true to my heart.
I love it. And I feel so connected, like sister from another mister vibes with you, because as you're talking, of course, I'm being an egomaniac a little bit and thinking, oh my God, this is just like me, only different. And maybe that's not an egomaniac, but
no, that's connection.
It's connection. I grew up Southern Baptist. And so I did the exact same thing you did, only I started reading Paramahansa Yogananda obsessively. I started going into your experience and of course the Eastern philosophies, and I had to come out the other end of that too. And I love yoga and meditation, but I consider myself now like a wild Christian, you know, and I had to come back to like the in some ways a lot of the religion of my childhood and keep what was good and throw away what wasn't. And I'm sure you and I have that in common. Secondly, the realm of dating has always been just such a challenging space. I thought for me, but as I talk to friends and people like you and students of mine that come into the Shakti school, I was telling you this in our little interview. When I start talking about the ancient traditions and the mystical understandings of dating, relationships, sexuality, whether you be a man and a woman, it really isn't about that. It's about polarity and about connection and about sexual longing and the longing to belong. When I start talking about those dynamics, the whole class wakes up and gets so excited and hungry and also a little, emotional. And I just feel like there's something in our culture right now. I want to say with women, but I think it's more with people that are really attempting to live and be their authentic selves and connect with spirituality in an authentic way, whereby these old modes aren't really working anymore. And yet
Right.
our new millennial, I'm right on that cusp of, I'm an elder millennial. That's the title. And so like
A
as a
millennial old, I've been
millennial,
called.
yeah, millennials were like, well, we know we don't want to. There's something super wacky about the dating world for young people, and that's like my heart is breaking, right? And where they're almost becoming asexual, and they're not like we were hanging out at the 7-Eleven, making out with guys, smoking cigarettes and drinking Slurpees. We were into dudes, right? And like now I'm
Totally.
hearing about kids that are just like not even wanting to date. And so we don't want to go into the future with that. And yet the modality of our parents and grandparents isn't exactly what we want either. And so maybe speak to your thoughts around the current state of dating in at least the Western world.
Yeah, well, my philosophy around this is that dating is supposed to be fun. It
Mm.
was when we were at 7-Eleven drinking a Slurpee, like that was fun. There was magic in the air. I mean, think about that, like sparkle and that electricity that's there when like some dude holding a skateboard like says
Yeah.
you're pretty. Like, whoa, that's epic. There is a feeling there unlike any
His
other.
name may or may not have been Clay Nelson. Okay.
Exactly. We can access that. And I think a really important part of dating in any arena, whether it's now or back then, or whether you're 13 or you're 35, you have to be able to access that feeling that lights you up when it comes to dating. Because if you don't get that, what's the point? No wonder the adolescents today are taking a different approach, because like the whole point is for that magic to happen. And I think it's so magical because it can lead to so many amazing things. So, when I think about, whenever someone says to me, I hate dating. Dating's the worst. My first thing I say back to them is it's supposed to be fun. So what's not fun about it? What's not working? How can we shake this up? And, for some people that is saying yes to too many dates, overcommitting themselves, or what I like to say, letting someone else confuse your availability in your free time. For some people, it's the idea of getting dressed up. They don't know what to wear, or like, they don't feel comfortable in their own skin, something like that. But if dating isn't fun, stop doing what you're doing, reassess. If dating apps are a tool that I think can be very, very useful. It's like having an email address and running a business, but they're not necessarily for everyone. And if someone would rather go sit in a cafe and read a book and maybe talk to someone, maybe not. I like to do that sitting at the bar, so you have a built-in person to talk to. That might be a better approach for somebody. But I think I am reluctant to say that the kids aren't dating anymore. I think the kids are reinventing dating as it has been reinvented over, each generation. And so we may see dating look a lot more digital. It might be a little more on the, I don't know, what are they using? The Snapchat? What's next? But that flirtation, that magic, that electricity, that can still happen on Snapchat. That can still happen in digital environments. It's just that part of that getting in that headspace for that excitement to happen is you, the individual, feeling comfortable and feeling safe to flirt. And so if kids are more comfortable digitally, have at it, flirt away. But my philosophy is that the flirting will never stop.
The flirting will never stop. So yes, from a tantric perspective, all of reality is just flirtation. Okay, so I want to go deeper into something you said there. I think the key thing I highlighted in my mind, it was pink highlighter for dating, and it was dating should be fun, because I'm one of those people, Lisa, that's like, I hate dating. Okay.
Really?
Oh yeah, I hate it. I hate
Come
it. I'm like an introvert that pretends to be an extrovert really well.
Wow.
Getting dressed, hate it. Going out in a restaurant, I mean, no. And so like, I'm one of those people that says I hate dating, and I used to say I don't date, I fall in love. And you know, that's another thing. But like, I think this idea of fun is really important for me to hear, and I think will really resonate with a lot of our listeners, no matter if you love to go out to dinner and get dressed up or not. And I think it brings in this deeper question of what is fun for you? And I'm like, oh shit, that's like a deeply philosophical question. Like, what do I really do for fun? And if I think about the best dates I've ever been on, it's been when I was doing things that I enjoy. And so at maybe like a conference where it was about an interesting topic that I was passionate about, or going jogging, or going to CrossFit, or going to a yoga class. Like, I love to do physical movement, and I love to be outside. And if I think about what and now I like this book at a bar. I'm not like, I go to bed at like 9:30 in the summer, right? But like, I never thought about that, because I really do enjoy reading books. And so this isn't really a question, more of like a highlighting this idea of we have to really be doing what we love.
Totally. And that's when you are not doing what you love on a date, that energy is with you on that date and will be a reflection of you on that date. And so, you know, you may go out with someone with whom you have great connection on paper, and then it doesn't spark anything because you don't want to sit there with your old fashioned cocktail or whatever it is. You didn't want to go bowling or whatever. So I think it's really important to bring your true self, you know, to that date. And you can do that. You can pivot when you're already on the date. So a great example is that like
pivoting.
Yeah, let's pivot. Like I'm a storyteller. I love stories. I love writing them, speaking them, hearing them. And so if I'm on a date with someone who just, it's a dud date. We're not going to get married. It's not going to happen. But like, there I am. I just go into kind of interviewer mode, and every human being on planet Earth has something interesting about them. So maybe I don't want to be your wife, but I do want to hear what you have to say. What are you really good at? What do you find interesting on this earth? What lights you up? And I think when I go into that mode, I am then entertained on the date. But I'm also sending a message to that other person that I'm not giving a lot of myself over to you. I'm turning this into an interview because that's what I like to do. And I'm going to ask you questions that have nothing to do with your romantic history, have nothing to do with like sex or anything romantic or exciting. Like, I'm going to ask you where you got your cool sneakers or something like that, you know?
Dude,
and I think,
I bet those guys, I don't know if you date men or women, but I bet that they fall in love with you. They're like, oh my God, she asked me so many questions about me. Feels so good. So good to be like wanted to know. I want to know you.
Yeah, I think so. I do. I date men despite men. Be great to date women. I think that all the time. I think it'd be so great to date women.
Think it all the time.
Man,
I just like men, dude.
Me too.
Damn it. I like them a lot.
So much. I say this every time I go on a date with a man. I'm like, why am I doing this? But I just, when you find one who's got something.
Okay. So that brings me to this deeper level. And I think when you and I met, we instantly went here, and where we went was, I was telling you, I lived in Hawaii with my mentor for 6 months, and I went out on a couple of dates, and I was in this deep spiritual work, right? Therapeutic work, spirit work. And we would sit on the couch in the morning sometimes and drink coffee and watch the sunrise. And she was like, dating, you've got to reorient your whole perspective around dating. And we came up with this phrase, deeper dating. And she was like, what would it look like if you went out on the date? And exactly to your point, Lisa, of like, I'm not going out wondering if you're my husband. I'm going out on this date to do energy work on myself during the date, filling myself up with love and energy, watching my reactivity to you, watching the way that I react and don't like things you say, or, ooh, I'm really drawn in to this bad boy that I can tell is sort of an avoidant. And yeah, that feels good. You know, like watching your reactions. And at the same time, she taught me this energy practice that she said, I want you to fill yourself up with energy from the earth into your belly the whole time you're dating. And I told you the story. I went out on a date like that, and the guy was like super hot and like talked about himself a lot, and he had like a big tech job, and he's a little younger than me, and I was a little intimidated by the hotness level. And I just like did this energy work the whole time, and he barely asked me anything about me. And at the end of the day, much to my shock, because I felt amazing, right? And I wasn't looking towards him to fill me up because I was so full of this energy practice I was doing on the date. And at the end of the date, he's like, dude, you're amazing. And I hadn't really said one word about myself, you know?
You're like, where are you getting this from? Like, correct, but how did you just come to that conclusion?
Because it's also a state that I was holding. And I think going into dates as a spiritual practice has been such a beautiful reorientation. And so maybe just speak to your own experience or what you've written about in terms of like dating as spiritual practice.
Yes, because you are a spiritual practitioner, so you're bringing your real self to that date. And when you do that, it shifts your mindset to this panic about, does this other person like me, which is real and okay to acknowledge. And like that panic comes up for all of us.
Natural.
But you are literally giving your body, mind, and spirit the message that we are not here to please this external person. We are here to show up as our authentic selves and actually enjoy a really great date with ourselves. We know we're great. We know we're looking good, feeling good, full of that real juicy energy from the earth that we have cultivated ourselves walking into this date. And that person is lucky to be around us and feeding off that energy. And I love this story that you tell about this guy being like, you're incredible, because I feel like, you know, I am so lucky to know so many women like you who are, you know, so thoughtful. So they have their own businesses. They've cultivated these really beautiful, magnetic, magical lives for themselves. And I feel like you're like the fourth or fifth friend I've talked to who's gone on a date with like some guy who they were not interested in at all. There was no connection. It wasn't going to happen. And after that date, he's like, you're the most incredible person I've ever met. I think I'm falling for you. And you're like, what? Based on what? And it is truly based on the ability you have internally to fall in love with yourself before that date, because that energy is so magnetic and it makes dates so fun.
It is, and it's a radical reorientation, and we're talking about dating, Lisa, but we could be talking about anything. This podcast we're on, the business, being with
salary negotiation,
everything. And let's take it back to your story that you told in the beginning. What I was doing on that date is Kriya Yoga. It's Paramahansa Yogananda would talk about this. Like when you work with energy, you're bringing Christ consciousness, light, love, whatever you want to call it, in through you and to you, and you are becoming, you know, I'm not saying I get it right on every date, not at all. I don't always feel, sometimes I'm in my insecurities, right? It's not like it's always this like radiant Beyonce is at the table, like it's like I'm on my period and I'm not fully like in my perfection of love. But what I find when I am in that place of humbled, surrendered humility to the earth and the heavens, and letting that meet in my heart, and I show up as my messy self, my imperfect self, and also the self that can love all of that, That's the magnetism. And then this is the great irony of tantric philosophy and all good mysticism. I don't care if you like me or want me or not. And I am also fully here for you and it and me, right? And
Yes.
freaking sexy AF.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Because nobody wants someone who's so desperate for them to love them. That removes the excitement, right? There's an exercise that I love. And like, listen, Kriya might not be for everybody, right? But it's a great way to center yourself. It's a wonderful practice for pulling yourself in and, you know, cultivating everything you just talked about. My mom's going to be so mad that I'm on this podcast with a Kriya bond. And she's like, and you never did it. God, I was on my own journey, Mom.
It can be prayer. It can be hand on heart. Like there's a million ways to connect to the inner divine, you know?
Totally. I have a really simple one. I've written about this one before, and it's something that everyone listening can do right now today, whether you're going on a first date or into a salary negotiation or into a tough conversation with your family member, whatever. It's a tool, in a book called Happily Ever After. It's written by this guy, Benjamin Daly, who's like this hot British guy who talks about dating all the time. And he's awesome. And one of his tips in his book is to make a list of 10 things you want in a partner, right? So, you know, it's a dating example, but you can use it more broadly. Yeah. Make the list of the things you want in the partner, attributes, you know, recycles, cares about animals, whatever it is. And then you make a list of 50 attributes that make you perfect for that partner. What is it about you that's going to attract that other person to you into your circle? And it's a tough exercise, even for someone who, you know, has a fair amount of confidence or whatever. We're not really socialized to spend a lot of time tooting our own horns. And this exercise is meant to really get you to think about what makes you so great and celebrate yourself as you do that.
It's not attributes you want to be. It's what you already are.
Exactly. It's what you already are right now in this moment that makes you a wonderful romantic candidate for your ideal partner. And I did this exercise actually on a plane. I was flying from
Radical reorientation.
And it's so important in a society that often celebrates self-deprecating humor and, you know, things like that. So I did this exercise on an airplane. I was flying from New York to San Diego, and on the first leg of the flight, I wrote my 2 lists, and I was kind of thinking, and I really had to dig, right? Like there were a few things that came off the bat, like I have great hair, but then I was like, I'm a good cook. I'm nice to people. I love animals. You know, I really had to get there. But once I did, I was like, oh yeah, I'm also a really good dancer and like a blast at weddings. And, you know, I got through that whole list.
My breasts are amazing.
Right. Totally. That's on there, audience.
I believe it.
But by the time I landed for my layover in Chicago and switched planes, I got in my seat, sat down next to a stranger. And by the end of that flight, that stranger, who was like a lovely man, probably like my dad's age, was getting my contact information so he could set me up with his very successful young son.
Oh my God.
And it was just an energetic shift, you know? We just got to talking. He thought I was brilliant. Bada bing, bada boom. Now I'm on a date.
Oh, I want a boyfriend.
Yeah, I sat down and said, do you know anybody?
So I want to say this in general. I have yet in the history of teaching women for 20 years and, you know, being in women's spaces primarily and being in my own therapeutic journey, I have yet to meet a woman where I was like, you know what? You don't really need any more self-esteem. And I have rarely met a woman where I'm like, take it down a notch, lady. Like, not that my opinion matters, but like, I have found that most of us, including myself, actually need to build a healthy ego. And this is the shadow side of Eastern mysticism, at least the way it's been translated in some ways, right? Mistranslated by a lot of people. It's like we actually need to have a deep sense of healthy self-love and a healthy sense of ego and self before we burn anything, right? You know what I mean?
Totally, totally. And people can sense that about us and around us, and it draws them to us. And it also, what's more, protects us from people who are going to be energy sucks or those who don't have a high level of confidence with themselves. I just went on a date with some guy a couple of weeks ago who the first thing out of his mouth, I started talking about, how I moved home to San Diego from New York. And he goes, "Oh, New York. Oh, so like big city girl." And I was like, I mean, like lots of people have lived in New York, whatever. And I was talking about my business and, my work history. And he just kept, "Oh, wow. Seems like, whoa, what are you doing on a date with me?" And I was like, "What am I doing on a date with you?" You know?
I've had the same thing and then I'm like, oh, should I tone myself down? And it's like, no, this is more about him than me.
Right. And that's the biggest question to ask yourself is as soon as you start to feel that way. And that's exactly how I felt. As soon as he was like, "Oh, whoa," I was like, my reaction in person in the moment was to be like, "Oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, I just whatever." And I am great. I did make a life for myself that I really love. And like, yeah, lots of people have lived in New York, but it's hard to live in New York. And I did that and I'm proud of it. And that's probably why I was talking about it on the date.
Well, and also when I'm with you, and this has been our vibe since we've met, which I hope we can continue being friends. Like I am like, yes, hell yes, go girl. And you were like, yes, hell yes, go girl. And if like your man can't do that,
what's he for?
that's it.
Right. What's he for? What do I need him for? If you're not there to celebrate one another, motivate one another, and make each other better, enrich each other's lives in ways that, only you can, what's the point? Just be single.
Totally. I really think dating, and, we're just talking right now about dating. I mean, once you get in the relationship, it's even deeper. There's a reason why, and I'm always kind of bouncing things off of what I've studied for decades. And like one of the, so in traditional Eastern spirituality, especially for men, you would be brahmacharya, meaning you weren't engaged in sexual relationship. You like, and the traditional Jews do this, the Amish do this, right? There's this period when you're a younger man, especially where you're doing spirit work and you're training to be able to tame your mind and control the wildness of the animal primal energy and libido, right? And one can argue there was some ups and downsides to that, but the beauty of that is when most people don't know this, but in the tantric tradition, when you were considered advanced, your teacher would go have you get married and you had to stay in the same room with her all the time. Like the most advanced spiritual practice was for a woman and a man to just like live in a house together.
Be present with a woman was the ultimate.
Present, right? Not just live there and boss her around, but be present and loving and in the spirit of that love with her, because the teacher knew every unseen corner of your dark side is going to be elicited through this relational realm, especially when you add in the nuclear energy that is sex. And totally. When I'm just on a date, I'm already like, oh my God, here comes, like, I've gone out on 2 dates with this guy, right? And I'm like, I'm in a moment where I'm not even really looking to be dating, but it just happened I saw him at Whole Foods and like,
ooh.
Yeah, like it was like, well, we had gone on a date like long ago and like we barely even remembered each other's name and like neither of us followed up. And then we saw each other in Whole Foods and was like, oh, hey. But anyway, my point with all this is just the texting. I can already feel the way I'm like, should I write back? Why didn't he write back? And like that starts to bring this little vulnerable one to this. And so dating really is tender.
Mm-hmm. It is really tender. And
pardon the pun.
Excellent. Love a pun. Live for one. But you're hitting on something so important. Going back to this notion of dating should be fun because it is really tender and because it is really vulnerable. I think we as women tend to be quite intuitive, quite perceptive. And so all of those energetic signals that you're getting in a date, whether before the date, when you're just texting, or you're on the apps, or when you're on the date, can be really overwhelming. And I think that is part of what makes dating so uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so another one of my tips is to hold it loosely.
Oh, I'm having an Oprah moment. I needed to hear that because I don't hold it loosely.
No, it's so hard because you're like, wait a minute, do you want to spend the rest of your life with the wonderful magical essence that is me?
How in
And
the
like,
world are you not jumping on the chance to be near this unicorn of a human?
you must be an idiot. Goodbye. And that's not realistic. They don't know us yet. Sometimes they're like, oh, you're amazing. And you're like, well, correct. Great.
And I'm not always amazing. And you
right. None of us are.
yeah.
Anyway, so when you think about how to hold it loosely on dates, that's not always intuitive. That doesn't always feel good in your body. Your body wants to, especially once you've had sex and things like that, you want to respond right away, and you want to get on the next date as quickly as possible, and you want to tell them everything you had for breakfast and whatever. But holding it loosely is a great exercise in retaining your power by holding on to that vulnerability and saying, you don't get this, you don't get full access to me and my vulnerability until we know each other enough to mutually commit. And
you earned it. Earned it too.
Exactly. You've earned it and I've earned it too. And here's a controversial one.
Give it to
Maybe
me.
Controversial. Maybe not.
The controversial ones tend to be like dancing into the realm of truth.
Hell yeah. Another way that I make sure I hold these things loosely is to date more than one person at a time. Intentionally. Not when we've already committed, not when we're, 5 to 10 dates in and we've expressed feelings for each other. I'm talking like first, second, third dates. Have multiple horses in the barn, because it will allow you to stay focused and reflective on how you feel versus how you are making the other person feel, and keeping your energy where it belongs, which is with you, and giving those candidates the opportunity to surprise and delight you and ask you out on great dates. And if they're not asking you out on great dates, they're just saying, do you want to come over and watch a movie? Like, you're busy because some other guy is asking you if you'd like to go mini golf or whatever.
So let me get real with you. Everybody out there, I feel like I'm going to put myself out there. It's for me, but it's also, I think, going to resonate with so many women. I hear you talking and I'm like, okay, Lisa, you're this hot blonde. You've mentioned San Diego, California, and New York City. Hello, I'm 41. No problem with that. But I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, right? I go outside and I literally go places and I'm like, there's like 8 single guys in this town. And I don't do online dating here because it's just the same 6 people. And so I guess my question is, if you and I were sitting at a consult and you were giving me dating coach advice, which maybe will happen, right? What do you do when you really do feel like, and sometimes I'm like, maybe this is a limiting belief. And because I don't really leave my house, right? I go to the gym, I go to the pool, and then I'm like, I go out in nature. But I'm like, I'm like, I would love to be dating 3 or 4 guys at the same time, but I will not date people that I know are no good for me. And so what do you do when you don't feel like that you're able to meet, and this has nothing to do with looks or money for me, but like the quality of man that you deserve?
Totally. It's a great question. And here's what I think, there are people who, when I was living in New York City and when I was living in San Francisco before that, I was doing dating double headers. I would literally book 2 dates in a night. And it was a great way to optimize an outfit and,
I love
and because it also allowed me to be create very strong boundaries around my time. I literally only have 90 minutes with you because I got to get uptown.
So do you I'm going on another date? Are you just like, I have plans?
Nope, I have plans. They don't need to know. You don't know me well enough to deserve to know what I'm up to after this.
Ooh, I need to hire you.
And that's great. And if you live in a town where you have lots of romantic prospects, I really encourage you to go do that. Make Thursday nights date night. You know it's coming. Set yourself up for success. I have a lot of tips on dating doubleheaders, actually.
Get into this. Okay.
We should get into it. But what I want to say to answer your question is that the whole point of dating multiple people at the same time is to keep your mindset so that you're not too dependent on another person, and really cherish and hold your mindset as, I have multiple prospects out here. I have multiple fish in the sea. I don't need to dumb myself down or, change my expectations or what I want just because there are fewer candidates. So I think the way to do that is to trick your brain a little bit into thinking that you're dating more than one person at the same time. And I do that when I don't have very many horses in the barn by flirting everywhere.
Whoa.
Hear me out.
I'm falling in love with you. This is brilliant. I'm like, oh my God, this woman needs a book. We need to do a course with her. Okay, sorry.
Let's do it.
Enthusiasm.
But I mean, think about it. So you just said you go to the pool, you go to the gym, like there are places to flirt there. And the beauty of flirting is that it doesn't have to be with someone that you want,
right,
to ask you out. Like, when I was living in New York, I loved flirting with my doorman, who was like this old man from Brooklyn who like sat at the front desk every day and said, "Hey, Lisa, beautiful smile." And it'd say, "Hey, Willie, back at you." And, that was great. You can flirt with the female barista and tell her how pretty her lipstick is.
I mean, this is me. This is totally me. I do this. Okay. But you're saying trick your brain into thinking, yes, I'm flirting with all of these people hopefully, appropriately.
Totally. And flirting doesn't even have to mean sexy or romantic. It can just be walking into a room with delight. I love to flirt through compliments, and they don't necessarily, they're better when they're not physical. To just say, oh my God, I love the song you guys are playing in this coffee shop, whatever. It's just a way to interact with a fellow human being in a friendly, fun-loving way. It's just practicing keeping things light, which can help inform your dating process overall.
So when you're giving advice to women who are like, I don't live in New York City, where I've been in New York and I've been in San Francisco, and it was like, OMG, candy in a candy shop. There's so many men, right?
Ugh, especially San Francisco. Whoa.
It was also like slightly in Denver and like Austin.
Oh, yeah.
I was on the Bumble in Austin, and I was just like, oh my gosh, cowboy after cowboy, take me home, but like, so I guess the question is, what do you do when you will feel like you aren't in these places where there's lots and lots of options? It's still just go out in the world and do what you love and be flirtatious with life.
Flirtatious with life is such a beautiful way to say that. And, the other core component here is setting yourself up to meet that person whenever you go out the door. Like, I love getting ready just to go to the grocery store, because I have a better time with me when I'm like looking good, feeling good, walking up and down the frozen food aisle, like picking out my smoothie ingredients for the week,
You're my guru of dating. Like, you're inside my soul, and you're like all the things that I am not correct. Like, I leave the house literally like hair in a bun, like, not that you can't be beautiful like that, but like, I don't leave the house looking like my best self almost ever.
Well, it's not necessarily about putting on that lipstick or brushing your hair. Like, sometimes when I got a messy bun and I'm walking around, it's more about the feeling. So for me, one way that I kind of find that and channel that really feminine energy is to like put on a lip, zhuzh my hair a little bit, maybe wear a crop top. But for someone else, it could have a lot more to do with their breath work and their affirmation work, looking themselves in the mirror and saying, you are beautiful, you are sexy. That mindset shifts the same way a lipstick could for someone else.
It's exactly that, because for me, not to keep relating it to me personally, but it's a personal topic for me. I have a limiting belief, and I'm seeing it really clearly on this podcast, and that is, well, I'm not going to meet a man here. And why should I blah, 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 blah. And it's like that limiting belief is actually the issue. And one of my teachers used to say, if it's your karma, and we could say this in a number of ways, but like if it's your karma to meet that special someone, there's no force on the planet that can prevent them from coming to you. And if it's not your karma, there's no force on the planet that you can access that's going to bring them. So just let go and be yourself.
I'm throwing my hands in the air right now. Hell yeah, exactly right. And it goes back to like that airplane example. Like I did not get on that airplane and sit down next to my future husband. I sat down next to an elderly gentleman who happened to have a son who he thought we might get along, and we ended up on a date together. Like that's how that kind of thing happens, because when you are in that mindset and you're walking through the world, maybe you're at the grocery store in your messy bun and you start chatting with some girl who has a recently divorced brother who has a passive income, and
we're looking for the hot guy that's Prince Charming, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I consider myself too, like an engaging person and an engaged person on airplanes and things like that. And I completely agree with you. There's still a part of our psychology, and I'm looking at it in my own psyche, where you're like, oh, I'm sitting next to this elderly guy. Oh, he's not like Clark Kent.
Right. His son sure was, though.
That's exactly, like, that's the limiting belief. And you know, think about like the shamanic tradition, the yogic tradition, the Christian tradition of like treating everyone as if they are the Sufi thing of treating everyone as if they are the beloved.
Yes. And whether you're on a date with someone who you see a future with or not, you can still treat everyone like they are the beloved, because it stays true to you as respecting and cherishing fellow human beings. But because you are self-aware enough to treat the human being as a fellow human being and not as your potential romantic partner, you keep the boundaries on your energy appropriate for the interaction.
Oh, all right. So I want this last piece of the podcast, if it feels good to you. We're going to definitely need to have you back and bring you into Shakti school for sure.
Hell yeah.
And that is, all right, I got a date coming up. We've touched a little bit on, you know, what do I do to kind of prime my psychology and my being to like be open to dating. Let's say you're about to go on the date. What would be the tips that you would give women or men? We do have like 3 guys out there listening, on how to like be your best self on the date.
Okay. Number 1, you got to masturbate before the date. We talked about this. You said it. I said it. We were like, oh, we just became best friends. I want to get into why. This is something that I actually I've heard this from multiple dating experts in my interviews in the past. And there are so many reasons to do it. But for me, the most important one is that it gives me this healthy flush that I cannot replicate with makeup.
You're like, I masturbated before this podcast. No,
why do you think I look so good?
I'm like, you're kind of rosy.
Well, you know, and there's so no, that it's no. There is so much to that goes so beyond the physical, even the physical, the way you look. Like, yeah, that's my number 1 makeup trick, is to orgasm. But far beyond that, like feeling physical pleasure is so important and gets you in a mindset. The reason I started doing this was because I was often going from like office to date, and I had to like go home first and change my shoes or whatever. And I was like, I need to change more than my shoes. Like I need to change my mindset, my approach. Like I am no longer like slinging in a boardroom. I'm trying to like be feminine and effervescent and funny and, you know, show off. What?
Yeah. Juicy.
Exactly. And so that was a big reason that I started doing it too. And I also find that this one's kind of hard to articulate, but once I am satisfied, I am in a much better position to gauge whether or not I find the person I'm interacting with to be interesting and engaging and exciting, because now I don't need something really important from them.
Mm.
At the same time, while I have a more level head and I'm able to assess the situation more clearly, I am also in a great mood, delighted, ready for a fun night out. And so it always sets me up in the right mental space. But other things, I mean, beyond something as simple as an orgasm, like that is all in the same vein of wanting to set yourself up to be really present in your femininity, feminine energy. I do that by listening to the same playlist before I go on every single date. And it's just all my favorite songs that make me feel like a baddie. And taking my time getting ready, because for me, there is an element to that physical appearance that helps boost my self-esteem and my self-awareness of all of the things that make me such a great partner to someone else, such a great potential partner to someone else. And so I illuminate those in an effort to remind myself of them.
We do a class in Shakti school about sexual energy, and what the ancients say about a woman's sexual energy is not very politically correct these days, but women freak out. They love it. It's like, oh my God, it feels so wrong, but it feels so right. And that is, we're different than men. And we could be lesbians and be different than men, but we're different. And there's something about our biology and our breasts and our womb and our vagina that emanate and hold a specific frequency. This is the basis of Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. I just heard someone speaking about how neuroscientists went into the brain and they were able to locate the exact spot in your brain that holds short-term memory. But there's nowhere in the brain that holds long-term memory, because where the brain holds long-term memory is the body, and it's the organs, and it's the liver, and it's the spleen, and it's the vagina, and it's the penis, and we hold these energies, right? And so, I mean, don't get me started. We do a whole long class about a woman's sexual energy and how we hold memory, and it's painful and it's from our experience, but it's also from our mom and our grandma and on, right? But we also hold potency and creativity and vitality and juiciness and all that stuff that you were speaking about. And having that orgasm helps awaken that natural inborn pull and magnetism that is the womb. And I think what's so beautiful about these ancient teachings is that there were methodologies that enabled us to heal and purify those parts of our body so that they become more, the quote is, glittering pink. And if you've had a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, and we all have, that organ turns, and I'm speaking now about energy, not actually the color, but the organ turns gray. And so staying glittering golden pink is the idea. And I just think that dating can be this really potent preparatory experience for accessing both the light and dark of that in all of us.
Absolutely. God, how well said. And speaks so much more to the depth of this tip. It's, yeah, you look great, but my God, you're accessing exactly the intuitive parts of you need to correctly assess this situation.
That's the word, intuition. And mine has not always been great. And I've had a lot of struggle and suffering around dating. And now I've taken a 2-year break, 2 years of intentional celibacy, and it's been amazing. But what I didn't finish saying that I kind of forgot, and now I remembered, about the beautification thing you were talking about, and putting on a red lip and getting your clothes. Like there's one sort of thread of feminism in our culture that says like that shouldn't matter and blah, blah, blah. But what the ancient tantras say is like the beautification is a part of the celebration of the way God made you. It doesn't matter what you look like, the shape of your body, if you're trans, if you're white, if you're Black, you're beautiful, right? And there are ways that we can accentuate and highlight that beauty. And so, yeah, sometimes I feel a little weird about wearing a bright red lipstick to Shakti school. And then I'm like, wait a minute. There are literally pages and pages of tantric texts about how to massage your breasts so as to be more attractive.
Totally. And it starts with you by highlighting that which you think is most beautiful about yourself. You are again accessing that power and that awareness of it, which makes you jet out your chest, show your true self, and highlight it as you walk through the world. And I mean, this isn't necessarily about a lipstick or whatever. Like, one of the things I always do before a date is I ice roll my face, which is a really good idea for, drainage and, reducing puffiness and things like that. But I literally take a rose quartz, roller, and I cover my entire face with this ice as a way to highlight and address my beautiful face that I love so much. That is my leading quality when I go on this date. Like, I am waking it up to say, hey, showtime, kid, do your thing. Love it.
Practice. Yeah. I was telling you the other day, sometimes I like to take an Uber to a date, even though I could drive, because I like to be taken, and I feel like a princess in the back seat, and I can do my energy work, and I'll put on Stevie Wonder telling me I'm beautiful. And that's a tantric practice, right? We're entering into what we call a bhav, an emotion state, right? And I get really nervous, especially before a blind date where you don't know the person. And so I want to just end, if you've got about 5 more minutes, Lisa, on one of the things we spoke about when you and I talked before. And that is also, it's related to this idea of deep intuition. And I told you the story of getting up and leaving a date. And it was one of the best moments of my life. I was out with this guy. I won't go super deep into the story. He started the date by talking about I didn't say literally one word the entire date. Hi, how are you? Okay. And then started this jet propulsion of a story about how his mom, his ex-wife, his sister, all the women in his life were total bitches. Oh my gosh. I couldn't believe it. It was like, what is happening, God? Where are the cameras? When am I going to get punked? Where's Ashton Kutcher? And because in that moment, and I come in and out of my soul, but in that moment, I was really centered in myself. And I literally felt an energy lift me up out of the table. And I just said the following words, which I learned from an elder shaman woman in Hawaii. She said, and I said to him, this isn't a good fit. And as I was leaving the restaurant, I hear him go, holy mackerel. Like, what's wrong with you, lady? And that was so funny to me. And I could never date a man that says, holy mackerel.
No
and
way.
two, there was this love in me, that God force in me that was wanted so much better than this for me that I couldn't even endure it for an hour. And so, Lisa, can you leave us just on some thoughts around boundaries in dating? And I want every woman out there to hear me. You have permission to leave, because every cultural conditioning, I am a Southern belle, born and bred, and everything in me culturally said a good Southern woman would never get up and leave a date. How dare she? So speak to boundaries and any kind of thoughts around that.
Well, first, I want to say you're so lucky. You're so lucky that you had all of this training and awareness and intuition that told you to just get up and leave, because you are so allowed to. And this is something to speak to the younger generation and how they are seeing dating differently. They totally get. Like, I've been experimenting with TikTok. Don't watch my TikToks. They're embarrassing, but they're going to get good. But for now, and I just relayed on a TikTok my article about how to gracefully exit a bad date. And I have all these tips and tricks, and I'll talk about those in a second. But I thought it was so interesting that when I put this on TikTok, thinking like, hey kids, I'm a dating expert. Like, here's my rundown on this. Their response to everything that I put in my article was, why wouldn't you just leave? Like, they totally got it.
They were schooling you.
They were schooling me. They were like, you don't need all these tips and tricks. Just exit the building. And, these kids haven't been to Ayurvedic training school. They just knew that it was okay to leave. And I was like, I was a little embarrassed that my TikTok video didn't do better, but I was also just filled with this celebratory emotion about how the next generation may be even better than we were. But I do want to talk about boundaries and gracefully exiting a bad date, because it's really important to get this right. And it is really important to know you are so allowed to leave a bad date. All you've agreed to do is meet this person. And once you've met them, you've fulfilled your end of the agreement, especially if they are the one who invited you out. They picked the bar. If someone else, as far as I'm concerned, if someone else invites you out on a date, they are electing to pay for that date. It was their idea. It was their invitation. You can buy my measly martini, Chad. I spent about $200 getting everything ready. Like my bronzer costs more than your entire outfit, sir.
I have never loved you more. You can buy my $8 martini, Chad.
Like, come on.
Shout out to all the Chads.
But I can also understand the nerves of being on a first date and not feeling comfortable just leaving. So I want to talk about a couple things you can do. One is, it's really important to, if you're on a cocktail kind of date, it's really important to drink your drink at the same pace that the other person is drinking theirs. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, if it's, you don't want to end up at different levels of finished and the bartender comes around again and says, would you like another? Because then one of you is electing to have another half an hour or so on this date, and the other one isn't necessarily signing up for that. So there's a really important point of negotiation when you both finish that first drink and you kind of say like, should we get another? Or like, I kind of have to get up early. It's a great exit to be done with the drink at the same time. So what I do is, once that drink is down to maybe has 3 sips left, and this is if I want to leave, it's not going well, I don't like this person, we are not a good fit, let me release him back into the universe and let him find what he's looking for. And I will do the same. 3 sips left in my drink, I excuse myself to the bathroom. And when I go to the bathroom, I make sure to bring my purse. And it's not because I don't trust this person or whatever. That is a good practice, but it is more importantly to take all of my energy with me into the bathroom, because it makes it a lot easier when I return, after kind of collecting myself and gearing myself up to say what I'm going to say. I return and my bag is already on my shoulder. Much easier than having to pick things up from your chair. And you say something like, well, this was super great, I think I'm going to head out.
And you're standing there.
And you're standing. You have not sat back down at the bar stool or the chair or whatever it is. And inevitably, this might not feel great for the other person in the moment, but ultimately they will be grateful that they didn't buy another round, spend another hour, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So while it is a little bit hard to say in the moment, you keep standing, you keep your purse or your jacket on your shoulder, and you say that. And more often than not, they'll kind of wave at the empty glasses and say, it was really nice to meet you, I got this. And that's an important moment, because that allows you to leave on your own instead of walking out the door with this person, because they're dealing with the bill. You can exit and call your car or whatever it is, and then you're gone. And both of you don't have to endure that awkward goodbye where you're not going to see each other again.
Brilliant.
So it's pretty simple, but it's also pretty effective. And I got another one while we're on the topic of avoiding going further with someone than you want to go. I have a trick for getting out of that awkward first kiss, that when you don't want them to kiss you, but you think they might be about to kiss you, and you're hugging or you're saying goodbye at the end of the date, when you go in for that hug and you think it's going to get interpreted as a kiss and you don't want that, the common reaction with your body would kind of be to pull away and have like a further away hug. Don't do that, because it leaves your whole face open for a kiss. What you want.
I'm feeling the awkwardness of this moment.
Right? What you want to do is basically put your face in their armpit, like get in close right away. It buries your entire face in their like chest area. They're not going to have an opportunity to kiss you. And you just kind of give them like that pat on the back kind of hug that you would give like your uncle. And then
Courtesy,
you're gone. Go ahead.
the courtesy pat. I am laughing so hard. This is incredible. I can just feel that awkward moment. And I've been a young, dumb 21-year-old who's just like, also, guys, young women out there, I feel like now I can say this. It's like, shit has changed in a good way. This thing of young women knowing they can leave, like that was something I had to really learn and cultivate. But also I feel like there were moments in my 20s when I didn't know how to not let them kiss me. And it was super weird and bad and awkward. And, I just love these tips of like, no, you never want to go against your own feeling and intuition. There have been moments on dates when, and I write about this in my upcoming book, but I do. And it's not something that I easily wrote about, but I felt like it was such an important thing to give women this example for my own life of going against my intuition. I went out with someone, and on the first date, every cell of my body was screaming, run in the other direction. But I was sexually, chemically kind of attracted. And I went out on a second date, and every cell in my body was like, okay, run in the other direction. And I ended up in a relationship with this person for a year. And it was, I don't hate him or blame him, but it was a learning experience. But it was the worst year of my life. And also the great teacher moment of my life. And so we think of this, it might just be a date, but when you go against your intuition, there are always consequences.
Absolutely. And don't blame yourself for having gotten in a situation where you learned so much that was so informative. Hey, it was a year and it probably wasn't a great year, but the teachings you got from that will be with you in the 50, 60, 70, 80 years to come. And there's something so important about that. I have too been in those situations. I have ignored my instincts and I have ended up with people who were not for me. And it was in those times where I feel like I was about to lose myself that I gained such important knowledge in that hardship. And that's important to acknowledge and recognize, for young people dating out there, like it's not all sunshine and roses and martinis bought by Chads. There's stuff that goes wrong, and celebrate those things once you're on the other side of it, because you're so much stronger for having gone through it.
100%. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on to Spirit Sessions. I know we're going to invite you into Shakti School. We got to do something really cool. And so we'll stay tuned for that. And I appreciate your realness and your humor and your obvious physical beauty. You guys can't see her, but she's a hottie. Way more importantly, like the inner beauty for real. You make me feel like I can be myself. And that's just such a wonderful feeling. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. You're doing something really special here with this podcast and your books. And I'm just so excited to know you.
Thank you. All right, woman. Well, tell our listeners how they can know more about you and anything you want people to know.
Yes, please. Well, the best thing you can do is follow me on Instagram. It's Lisa with 2 A's. So Lisa A. Holden, Holden. I write for Popsugar. You can find my work there. You can also find it on my website, lisaaholden.com. Lots of great things in the pipeline that I can't quite talk about yet, but I'm super jazzed about. And if you want to book a one-on-one dating hype session with me, you can do that straight from my website, or just honestly slide into my DMs with your question. I'm all for it. It's Lisa A. Holden on Twitter as well. And I can't wait to hear from your listeners.
Oh yeah, you're going to hear from them. Yes, everybody set up a dating hype session. I'm like, that's such a great title. And I mean, if I just may indulge, when I sit with you, Lisa, I'm literally like, oh guys, I feel like I'm with a superstar that no one knows about yet. So I want to let everyone know, Katie knew this woman, you have great work to do in the world. And Yeah, I'm just glad that you got to be a part of spirit sessions in the Shakti school.
Oh my God, you're going to make me cry.
That is kind of my specialty, but I'm not trying to do it. It's just on my heart. I'm like, oh, Lisa's about to blow up.
Oh, what a dream you are. Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. We could all use one.
Yeah. Oh, madre mia. We really could. All right, lady. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.